he's just a lazy guy, he's looking at the lizard on the wall or whatever. But in fact, such thinking might be the one that's really needed to produce something that really works, and it's not just a fly-by-night kind of thing and so on. But there is a certain amount of care you have to show in doing this. If you're trying to disprove some conventional wisdom, if you spend all your time trying to disprove these guys and you're not making any progress, after a while you better give up on it. It's like P equals NP kind of problem, right? But at the same time, when somebody who appears to be a senior guy and pretends he knows everything is coming and saying, hey, I know that this is a wrong way to go, you better not go and all that, you have to ask him to, justify that opinion. You cannot just take something that was being said by a senior person at face value. So you have to question authority kind of thing, right? But that's a clear balance you have to strike there. You cannot just make it your job to, disprove this guy and spend all your time, and you may not go anywhere with it, and then you'll get booted. So it's that sort of environment I got into, and very much at the beginning I got into this situation with this one guy who later became a fellow, and he was one of these 60s Berkeley kind of guy, Caucasian guy. He had a long beard, long hair. He was actually a hippie, Vietnam War, protester and all that, and he had an Indian guru and things like that. So he was very aggressive kind of guy, and he'll jump up and down and all that. And initially he said, Mohan, I'd like you to work on this, and there are these two alternatives, and I think that this presumed commit is better than presumed abort. And he gave me some justification, and then I realized that he had only looked at one aspect of this algorithm, namely the messaging aspect. The logging aspects he had not even explored at all. So I said, I have to now figure out how to, how the logging thing will work, and then do the comparison. So I said, I'm not going to take your thing at face value. So let me go through this more detailed design. So it turned out, his hunch was wrong, because when you looked at the logging aspects, presumed abort became better than presumed commit in most situations. So having learned that lesson up front in my very first piece of work, that you shouldn't take somebody's, however strongly stated opinion at face value, but you should question that guy to, give more information or do your own homework to prove or disprove what that person is saying. Later on, it came in handy with this new project also, the Starburst project, in the context of which I opened up all these old locking issues and so on. He again tried to tell me, who cares about this fine granularity locking? Page level locking is good enough, especially if you are in this project where we are focused on the workstation environment, small work groups, small number of people going after a database. There won't be enough concurrency and all that to worry about and so on. I said, look, I don't care. This is an opportunity because we are doing something from scratch, and I can try to, in this context, explore these unexplored problems. So standing my ground in the end, it turned out was a great thing, because I actually came without the baggage of the System R, because I was not there. I came in the middle of the R star project, the distributed version of System R. And so I looked at things differently. Some of the things that they thought were important properties to preserve from System R in this new algorithm, I felt were totally unnecessary things. And it's because of that that this Aries family of algorithms came up. So all that is being talked about here. When you are coming up with some ideas and you are trying to deal with pre-existing systems or products or whatever, it's important to also worry about how your new thing will get put into this existing thing. So for instance, SQL Server, that was actually Sybase's product, which was relabeled by Microsoft and sold originally, it had page locking as the smallest granularity. DB2 on the mainframe had page locking as the smallest granularity, and we had to then allow for something smaller than a page to be the unit of locking. Doing that required a lot more effort than when we built a brand new database system for the OS2 environment. My algorithms got into that product right away, because there was no legacy to deal with, no pre-existing databases and structures and all that, code and all that. So if you try to say, as many research people do in the universities, oh, let's start from scratch and build this fancy castle. It may look good and all that, but it may not go anywhere because there is already this other stuff existing. So how to evolve that existing thing to provide the additional functionality, even though it might be more painful and all that, because you have to spend time learning how that existing thing works and then figure out how to extend it, might still be a better thing than building something from scratch, because the other thing might see the light of day in terms of getting commercialized or whatever, whereas this start from scratch revolutionary way may not wind up succeeding. This is not to say that there aren't things like brand new things that happen. Like, for instance, the RISC technology was a complete rethink of how computer systems were built, how computer architectures were put together. Complex instruction set was a simple instruction set. Relational, when it came out, was a revolution compared to the pre-relational database systems. But you cannot always hope to do this revolution and all revolutions will succeed kind of thing. So that's not something that can be taken for granted, and hence you need to be very careful when you go for evolution versus when you go for revolution. So in our case, we in IBM Research were fairly careful in trying to be relevant to the rest of IBM, whereas Xerox PARC and Bell Labs, great examples of organizations that produce a lot of innovation, in the end didn't do enough to benefit their own motherships. Unix came out of Bell Labs, but AT&T didn't really benefit a whole lot from the fact that Unix became so popular and all that. All this GUI stuff that Apple and Microsoft made tons of money on was actually Xerox PARC's innovation. Steve Jobs went there for a visit and picked up a lot of the stuff, and this guy then had the audacity to go sue Microsoft later on, when he himself had copied the bloody thing from Xerox. So we in IBM Research for a long time have been conscious of the fact that we are part of a commercial organization, and so we cannot just do ivory tower research. We should also make sure that what we are doing has some chance of seeing the light of day, and so we pay attention to what the product side is doing and get in touch with customers and their problems and so on. So there was a time when I joined IBM Research, if I wanted to hear customer stories, I had to actually go to the product labs and sit in the briefing centers and so on. Whereas later on, even in the research labs of IBM, we started having briefing centers and customers were brought there. And so instead of things getting filtered through the product organization for us to get to know stuff, if we don't personally go to the product labs, this was a great way for us to know what's happening out there in the real world and appropriately think of new ideas or modifications of existing ideas to deal with what's relevant. Because you can't always also listen to customers. Because if you listen to customers always and base everything you do on that, then you'll only be doing incremental work. Relational technology wouldn't have come up if you went and talked to the IMS customers, the pre-relational guys, or RISC technology wouldn't have come up if you only listened to the mainframe guys and they only asked for incremental changes to what they were using at that time. So some of these grandiose things like paradigm shift and such will happen only when you do some freewheeling thinking. And then of course the monkey is on your back, like it was on the back of the relational proponents, to go sell that idea. Guess what? IBM invented RISC as well as relational, but we were not the first ones to benefit from that. Oracle came out with its product based on reading my predecessors' papers and so on, because IBM product people are saying, why rock the boat? IMS is selling well. Why should we confuse our customers by releasing something that's a different thing and then having to explain to them when to use this versus that? And it's only when Oracle put out its product, research guys at IBM went and harassed the hell out of product guys and saying, look, this is atrocious. We spent the money and came up with all this, and those guys are now, selling it. So same thing happened with RISC. HP and Sun and MIPS and there was one other company and Berkeley people and Stanford people got more mileage out of it before IBM itself took it seriously and released the RS-6000 and such machines. Later on, of course, we got our revenge in some sense by, the Turing Award being given to John Koch, the IBM research guy at Watson Research, and not Dave Patterson and all these guys, Hennessy, the current president of Stanford. Those guys, a lot of people think are the inventors of RISC, when in fact it was John Koch and his people at Watson Research who got it. So sweet revenge was the Turing Award going to the right person. What else? So, this algorithm or family of algorithms that I developed later on had lots of impact and all that going into many products, not just IBM products and prototypes, but even, SQL Server and such things. Lots of things. So convincing the research community was an issue because they thought it was a solved area. I didn't want to, have the sheep mentality and go after only the currently hot topics and become part of this milieu where, there was greater likelihood of whatever you put out getting accepted than when you are trying to go against the stream and do something. But if you do succeed when you are not doing the sheep mentality thing, you could wind up having a lot more impact than being part of the gang and doing incremental stuff or stuff that gets more appreciation in the short term because, you are in tune with all these other guys who think this is a hot area. Just like right now, NoSQL is like a hot area. Anything goes kind of attitude over there. But if you go say, hey, we should do something totally different, they're all like, this guy's crazy, just ignore him and so on. The other thing I did, I spent a fair amount of time digging into all this old stuff, understanding what worked, what didn't work, and documenting that stuff, giving credit to those people. Even when I invented some of the things, when I did it with product people, even though they were not normally writing papers and such, they couldn't care less, or they might have cared, but they didn't think they could write papers. I actually, put them on the invention disclosures for patenting and papers and such. So this also meant they had their skin in the game. So working with them early on in the innovation cycle meant they felt they were part of the innovation, and hence they wanted it to succeed, not just the invention, but innovation, meaning it becoming real. So when the time for technology transfer came, they were more than happy to do the rest of the work to make it become real in terms of productization and so on. Whereas if you think you are this fancy guy with a PhD next to your name and you are the highfalutin thinking types and you shall not mingle with these masses in the product organization, however fancy your work might be, you will have a harder time throwing it over the wall and then letting it get caught by these other guys and commercialized. They are not going to be as receptive. And if you also have this hang up that you think you are the thinker and they are just the implementers and such, they would rather invent something that may not be as good as yours, but they'll feel that they own it or that they are the fathers or mothers of that thing. And the pride of ownership might make them do that thing and see that becoming real than spending time on your thing, even if yours is better in some sense or in many senses. Let's see. So anyway, over the years, not just doing the research part and going to conferences, but also working with different divisions of IBM, which involve a lot of travel, a lot of sacrifices on the part of the family. I didn't spend enough time with my kids, policing their homework and this and that. My wife herself did various things, right? English literature, journalism, and then a master's in computer science without ever having done any college level math until that point. 2 years of prereqs in terms of computer science undergraduate courses and math courses before she could actually get into the graduate program.